God. Piers? Yeah. Right. We have different views on some things, yes. What's the matter with that? Well, that's a good question, though. What's my relationship with Piers? I've known Piers for a long time. I've known Piers since about 1998. Yeah, and we did housing campaigns together. He was a Labour councillor in Southwark, and then they started privatising the housing. He ran a campaign against the privatisation of housing, and then stood as an independent against representing the tenants against this privatisation of housing. So that's how I got to know him. We made a little film for his campaign, and we worked together there from about 1998 till about 2004-05, and then for various reasons, I was abroad, stuff like that, then we weren't really working on anything together. And then when Jeremy stood, I met him there and we campaigned together then. We were ostracised by Jeremy Corbyn's campaign. We didn't like Piers, and they're not that keen on me either, to be honest with you, but they didn't like Piers. No, it's not Jeremy, it's the team around him. Yeah? The same people who brought Keir Starmer in. They didn't like Piers. And in particular, they didn't like the fact that he disagreed with the mainstream left-wing narrative on climate, because climate was becoming a big issue at the time. Up until about 2000, it's the Extinction Rebellion thing. Up until about then, 2014, 15, something like that, climate wasn't really a defining issue within the left. Environment was, but not climate. And then it became, a climate dogma. And I didn't know one way or another. I knew that a lot of left-wing people that I knew were advocating, join the climate protest. It's the young generation standing up, and you've got to connect with them. And so I sort of tried to understand that. I'd never really, it was one of these things again where there are claims about science that you're supposed to accept, and I just felt uncomfortable with it, with the idea that this is a scientific fact that we must all follow. So of course eventually, after discussing with Piers and I did interviews with him about it, sceptically questioning him on what he was saying, not knowing one way or another, but it seemed reasonable argument he was putting, so I thought it was fair enough to discuss that. And then the Extinction Rebellion thing came along, and when I wandered into Marble Arch one day, there were all these Extinction Rebellion flags, with the egg timer on it and all different colours. And I'd read about a guy called Sam Alinsky from the 1960s, who was an American campaigner, organiser. In America, they didn't really have a labour movement as such. They had lots of organisers. So the organisers would organise protests. So they had learned, and they had turned a sort of method of protesting, or learned to develop the method of protesting. That Alinsky, I remember reading it must have been about 1990 I read it, and it was a method of organising protests that would have, unify, have a single colour, have a single programme, learn how to mobilise people, go to shareholders meetings, cause a stir. And then when I saw this protest here, it reminded me of that, and also of something that they call the colour revolutions, which what I think happened is that the American intelligence agencies and also the American government, who had quite a lot of people who were former left-wing activists inside the American government under George Bush, for example. A lot of the leadership were former Trotskyists, funny enough. And they had learned from experience various ways of protesting. And in America, protesting, again, was not based on labour movement organisation, as sort of classical Marxism and socialism advocated. It was based upon the idea of causing a hullabaloo, getting known, organising a protest. Now, I had an affinity with that, because I like the idea that you could, with a few people, you could cause a stir and upset the balance of and let people think about something, So I like that kind of idea about protest. But what it seems to me is that many protest movements that we see today have got this characteristic that some business people have looked at the protest movements as a way of sort of altering way of thinking about something, shifting consciousness, swaying votes, that type of thing. And they've seen that you don't have to run a political campaign simply based on, going and knocking on doors and saying vote for me. You can run a political campaign based on vote for me, knock on the door, advertise campaign, and then mobilize a revolution. Wave some flags around, make it like a unified campaign, a colour, a symbol, like this egg timer on a colour flag, or the what they call it, olive revolution in where was it, in Lebanon? The orange revolution in Ukraine.
The CIA.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the intelligence agencies, particularly the Americans and also some corporations, clicked onto the idea, well, we can promote and mobilize movements that look like genuine movements and can shift opinion on things that that capture the mood. You might remember, it goes back a long way, it's nothing new about this, but you might remember when I was a kid, you might remember the advertisement, I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony, and it was capturing the hippie movement and drawing it in to, was it Pepsi Cola, was it? I think it was Pepsi Cola.
No, it's Coke.
No, I think it was Pepsi.
It's Coca-Cola. I'd like to buy the world of Coke.
Well, it was one of those. It was a Coke or Pepsi. Make comments comment below. Comment below. Subscribe below.
It was Coca-Cola.
It was something like that. And but it was a hippie thing. And they tried to draw the Beetle car, right? Became the symbol of hippieism, right? And then the 60s generation were drawn in. They were drawn in to, some people talk about this cultural revolution inside the system. It was that a layer of the children of the bourgeoisie, aspirant bourgeoisie, and developing bourgeoisie, developing capitalists and petty capitalists, they became integrated within the boom in the economy, provided the foundation for them to become integrated within the system and to present themselves as revolutionaries. I mean, look, there are people nowadays within the pinnacle of capitalism who initially presented themselves, I'm a revolutionary, like Steve Jobs, revolution in technology, Google, do no harm. That's what they said.
Do no evil.
Do no evil, sorry. Do no harm is the doctors, isn't it? Doctors, do no harm, farmer, help the masses, jab their arms, jab the baby, And so these, they tried to capture, because change is a peculiar thing, revolutions from the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the 18th century this is, they captured the imagination of the masses in many parts of the world. And so if from observing that process, rather than just running in fear from revolution, sections of the establishment began to think, well, we can harness and take the punches of a revolution and grow from that. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, yeah? So they can assimilate elements of revolution and then feed it back as propaganda, as sales techniques, as products to the population. So you have a revolutionary tool, a revolutionary device, and pharma, for example, after the Second World War, when the welfare state became a powerful force, and in Britain, this was incarnated in the idea of the National Health Service. So everybody came to think that good health comes from this institution whereby you go into hospital to have a baby. Yeah. You have machines, the machine, the Monty Python thing, the machine that goes bleep, and costs a lot of money. And they have that, they have that something where their baby's born. Right, tell them every week, because they've got all the machines there. Now the same thing with the pharmaceuticals. They jab you, you're 50 years of age. have you taken statins yet? We're going to prescribe them for the rest of your life, So then you're suddenly on statins, and your body, you might get ill from the statins. But you think, okay, apparently 25% of all deaths in Britain and the United States are caused by prescription drugs. So you assume that this is healthcare they're looking after. But actually it's mass healthcare based on the interest of Big Pharma promoting a specific, sales pattern that suits their interests and that has a trajectory to it that doesn't ask and question what it's doing. It just does. And it's self-fulfilling. The doctors prescribe to you statins. They're not going to spend the nights thinking, was it really correct to prescribe actually statins? They don't sit at home working that out. You might sit at home having funny feelings and thinking, maybe this isn't right for me. But they've already said this is prescribed for life. Otherwise, you're going to get a stroke. Or your risk of getting a stroke is much higher. And therefore, the system has incorporated your sentiment for the National Health Service to twist you into somebody who's a permanent consumer, possibly paid for by the state, of statins. So in these ways, revolution can be incorporated. So when I saw the Extinction Rebellion people standing in Hyde Park, they'd closed down. The peculiar thing was, when I walked over, this was the first time I'd ever seen these people. I walked over to Marble Arch, and there were all these flags waving. It looked like some kind of medieval festival, and then
I think it was.
and then there was nice dance music, lots of beautiful women and men dancing around there, young people, and their little sign, the Extinction Rebellion sign, hourglass with coloured flags, and the police had closed the whole area. All the streets around here were closed. I went to Oxford Circus, and one of the guys I know from various campaigns, and also Piers knows from various campaigns, he had a big boat in the middle of Oxford Circus, a pink boat, and he was running around on his bicycle coordinating it, and then I found out afterwards that him and a number of other people were paid to do these protests. So I thought to myself,
Who paid that?
well, Extinction Rebellion. Extinction Rebellion was getting a lot of money. As it got as it ran this campaign, you see, if you want to run a campaign, you need money. I mean, look, Piers stands here, give me some money for a leaflet, right? You need money to run campaigns. You need people and you need money. And they know this. And so there are people with money who decided they want to fund and finance a campaign with full-time political activists paid to do all sorts of activity. Danny Shine, for example, Speaker's Corner, you know him, Danny Shine, the guy who says, he's going to get, don't believe me and all this. The anti-natalist.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Danny Shine stands up here. And I went up to him one day, I said, what do you think of this Extinction Rebellion thing? And he said, look, it's complete madness, he said. And he said to me, look, but Roger Hallam, he was the founder of Extinction Rebellion. He wanted to pay Danny Shine to do activities. And he said to me, why don't we both go along? So me and Danny Shine went to interview Roger Hallam. It's on YouTube. And when we did so, in the interim time between that, one of the other guys at Speaker's Corner, Kyle's the speaker of Speaker's Corner as well. And Kyle came up to me and he said, Extinction Rebellion have offered to pay me money to be an organiser for them. I knew another girl who was making puppets, and she was being offered money to do protests, puppet protests for Extinction Rebellion. I know another woman who dresses in red and wanders around. You see it on all the television and all the photographs of Extinction Rebellion. I know this one of these women. There's about 12 of them. They wander around in red, pretending to be like post-apocalyptic monsters, and they're paid to do these protests. So then I thought, well, that's not your normal protest. If you got financiers paying people to do, I mean, yes, the people involved, well, they might be concerned about environment. They don't know one way or another what the arguments are. They just think, I don't like the environment being spoilt, and therefore, global warming is presented to you on telly as the issue. And therefore, why shouldn't I take money from somebody to go and protest about the environment? And that the confusion about it is that there is environmental pollution, and therefore the big organisations financing these campaigns are actually manipulating people to think that they're doing what they really believe in. They got their chance. Suddenly, someone is financing them for a campaign that they really believe in. So, for example, you take Greta Thunberg. I don't have anything against Greta Thunberg. One day, she was sitting on her own outside the Swedish Parliament, on her own, and someone went and photographed her. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, it was all over world news. Now, since when does one girl in Sweden suddenly become world news? One person. Why is that world news? Because if you look back at the people who promoted the image of her in front of the Swedish Parliament, you'll find there's a connection between them and a number of organisations that are globally influential in the financial sector, in the corporate sector, and in the media. And they promoted her as a mechanism for mobilising young people around the world. It was known as Fridays for Future. So they called school students all around the world out on strike on the basis that one girl who was photographed, I think his name is, I can't remember the guy's name, he runs a campaign, it's called We Don't Have Time. We Don't Have Time orchestrated the story about Greta Thunberg. I don't think she knew what was going on. I think she may have genuinely believed, and all the better. It's no good just, I pay this guy to stand up and say something on my behalf. He won't look genuine. But if I say, let's go and run a campaign, and he agrees with it, and then I say, here's £500 for doing what you did, and he'll come back next week and do the same thing, looks much more genuine than if I turn around, than if I force him, if I just go and say, oh, go and do this cynically. There are people who do this during the mayoral election a couple of years ago when Piers stood. There was a guy who stood in the elections, and his name was the guy with the bus. What was his name? The guy with the big bus and loads of money, the American guy. What's his name? No, in London he stood for the mayor. Anyone remember his name? It's a non-entity. Anyway, he had millions of pounds behind him. He runs this thing called London Real. It's a YouTube channel. Brian Rose. He got there in the end. So Brian Rose had millions of pounds behind him to run a campaign, and he went out on the streets, and there were people in the colours, red colour of Brian Rose, big posters and beautiful leaflets, giving out these leaflets. And when he went up and spoke to them, again, beautiful girls and boys, young girls and boys standing there, giving these things out, looking great. And when you went up and spoke to them, it was quite clear they were paid to go and give out the leaflets. There was no commitment on their part to a belief system of politics or anything else or protest. They were there, paid by Brian Rose and his campaign to promote Brian Rose and his campaign. This is the way in which a lot of modern politics, of course, Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak are doing the same thing. They think, we are told politics is about beliefs. Rishi Sunak, Suella Braverman, Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer, they do not have a conviction belief in their brain. And nor, by the way, do almost 95% of politicians in Britain, of politicians in Europe, and politicians in America have no convictions of their own. They are paid agents of political organisations funded by big corporations to promote the interests of the big corporations. That's what they're there for. So to make out that there's a political campaign going on. I mean, look, the thing about Jeremy Corbyn was, even though they manipulated him, and we ended up because of that, oh, go away. Because of that with Keir Starmer, they didn't like Jeremy Corbyn because he was a bit of a loose cannon. He had far too much power for someone who didn't come from within the establishment. And therefore, they feared him. And that's why they ran a massive campaign accusing him of anti-Semitism, which everybody knew was a lie. But they ran this campaign on a massive scale so that all around the world, people would turn around to you and say, oh, Jeremy Corbyn, anti-Semite. And they knew nothing about it. And yet they would come out with that. It was a spontaneous response. Name Jeremy Corbyn, anti-Semite. And eventually they got rid of Jeremy Corbyn from the Labour Party whip. Dude, fuck off. I mean, really? Huh? Well, these are the guys who go
they're being paid.
These are the guys who go about climate change, yeah. Fly around the helicopter, observe the protest. And then when Keir Starmer took over, suddenly there was no anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, unless it had to be some left-wing Jewish person. So the anti-Semitism story was a pure fictional invention. Not one of the people who were claiming to be offended by anti-Semitism from Jeremy Corbyn or any left-wing person, generally Jewish left-wing person, not one of those people were actually offended by so-called anti-Semitism. They invented the story because it suited their interest to mobilise the mass media and the politicians against Jeremy Corbyn. Now, they've done the same with Piers Corbyn as well. Sorry?
Just the way the Soviets did, actually. They used anti-Semitism.
That's a long story, and
Yes.
it's not one I'm going to go into now.
Okay.
I don't mind debating it someday, but it's really not. It's a very long story. They did use anti-Semitism, but it's a very long story, and it's a distraction from the subject matter.
Okay.
But anti-Semitism has been used all around the world, to be honest with you. It's not just here, all around the world. They tried it on Robert Kennedy Jr. recently. I mean, I saw it in the newspaper. They're saying now Robert Kennedy is going to stand independently in the election. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I don't support, like you say, he's got all sorts of things wrong, but he said the right things on the pandemic. So on that, I'm fully, and that was the decisive issue of our era. Yeah? There was the Cold War, that was a big issue. And then there was the pandemic. Yeah? I mean, then there were a number of wars in Iraq and so on, but they were localized to certain corners of the world. The pandemic was a global issue and affected everyone on Earth. And therefore it was the number one issue in the world in modern times. And he took the right stand on that question. And I noticed that the newspapers this week began to soften their stance on Robert Kennedy. They said, I saw in The Guardian or The Independent this morning, they had this piece on there, Kennedy to stand as an independent. And then it said, the vaccine skeptic, they called him. They called him a vaccine skeptic. Now, up until this article, I guarantee if you check back, you will see Kennedy is referred to as an anti-vax conspiracy theorist. Now he's referred to as a vaccine skeptic. See there, man. Now, that's a rather unusual change. And that, I think, is because they know he's got a lot of leeway if he stands independent. Biden, well, the fact of the matter is, you know, he's nearly dead. You know, even if he was elected, he'd be dead. He can't say anything. He looks terrible. He stumbles over his words all the time. He stumbles when he's walking from a podium onto the anywhere else. He can't do anything. He's a complete cretin. And that cretin illustrates that power doesn't lie in his hands. Power is beyond or behind the president, not what the president does. But of course, the reason why they hate Trump is because Trump was independently financing himself as a billionaire, and therefore he didn't always abide by the line taken by the Washington elite. But they still controlled him Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the measures he took during the pandemic. He was opposed to them, first of all, but they put pressure on him. And when they put pressure on him, he submitted, unlike Kennedy. Now, that doesn't mean Kennedy wouldn't submit, but at the moment, he's taken a stand. He's known for opposing this, and therefore, I think people should support him, because his standing in the election will smash up the old apparatus of power. And by the way, unfortunately, I was a Labour Party member from 1980 up until last year, although they expelled me a year and a half ago. They're still asking me for money now. So I don't know why. They're expelling me and say renew your membership after they expelled me again. But in any case, I don't want to go back into the Labour Party, but because there's basically a giant fraud taking place on the world's population by the main political parties in all the countries of the world, who represent big business, the biggest businesses in the world, the giant corporations, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the big corporate Apple, Alphabet, Google, Metaverse, all these companies. A lot of them are partly owned by each other, and then they have global influence and control. And their aim under modern capitalism is to create a society in which there is permanent surveillance over the population, which of course comes through your mobile phone. They've already got, they talk about, China's going to introduce social credit system. You've already got ubiquitous, universal surveillance, everything you do on the internet already, on your mobile phone. It's already there. They already track everywhere you go, to the degree where if they wanted to, they could send a missile to blow you up, no matter where you are, as long as your mobile phone. It started in 1995, when the Chechen rebel leader, Dudayev, was at war with Boris Yeltsin, leader of Russia at the time. And when there was a war going on, Boris Yeltsin, on advice from the Americans, Boris Yeltsin used a laser-guided missile to blow Dudayev up when he was on a mobile phone communication with Boris Yeltsin. From that time onwards, the mechanisms of universal surveillance and control have been the mobile phone. So the safest way to live is to leave your mobile phone at home for several hours a day. And by the way, try it. Try it, ladies and gentlemen. Try it. Leave your mobile phone at home. When you pick up your mobile phone, it's when you get home, you pick it up, you check out any messages. Do I want to read the news? Do I want to look something up? And then when you go out, leave the mobile phone at home, like it was a landline. And you'll see you have more time, more energy, a higher sex drive, more pleasure, more fun, more communication, instead of going like this all the time. It's not a good movement. Your thumb starts to hurt.
That's right.
Your thumb starts to hurt and your brain ceases to function. Now, are there any questions or contributions from the audience?
So were we more democratic sort of 20 years ago?
Well, yes.
Seriously?
Yes, in many ways, yes. I mean, there are different levels to it. The fact that you could go to a meeting, you could discuss at a meeting, you could put your hand up, you could vote for something, vote for or against something. Nowadays, that doesn't really happen. Like I was in the Labour Party, that's what they used to do. They don't do that anymore. Not in reality. In reality, it's stitched up and controlled. So if that's not happening in the main party, supposedly representing the mass of the working class in Britain, where exactly is it happening? Where exactly is the participatory democratic control that people have? What influence do you, ask yourself, any of you, what influence you actually have over any political process going on in society? What influence do you have over what happens where you work? What influence do you have over what happens where you live? What influence do you have over decisions about what happens with your money? What influence do you have over decisions about what happens to a local school? What influence do you have about decisions in your local healthcare system, in the local police? What influence do you have over any of those questions? And if you tick off your boxes of areas you're involved in, you will find you have almost no influence whatsoever even if you choose to try to have influence, you will have no influence over what happens. And so only by rekindling mass democratic participation from below can you possibly gain some power. Now, the only movement that did that in modern times, in Europe, around the world actually, in really recent times, was the anti-lockdown protests. They were the only ones who emerged against all official dogmas and doctrines, against all official advice. You were called a plague rat, a murderer, a killer, a potential killer of your family and friends. If you didn't put a mask on, if you didn't wash your hands, if you didn't stand 2 meters apart, if you didn't stay at home when they ordered you to. And so those people who resisted that, actually they created some grassroots democracy again. By the way, that happened here, don't forget. When we came to Hyde Park, the police chased us out the park, arrested us, beat us up. For months on end, in fact, for nearly 2 years this happened at Piers Corner. They were fighting us back and forth about whether we could come to Hyde Park at all. There was a young girl over here, dragged to the fore by the police, about 15 years of age. There was a man sitting over there, having a cup of tea, and they arrested him for having a cup of tea. Arrested him, brutally, physically assaulted him, and arrested him for having a cup of tea. So, and that's how far the destruction of democracy has gone, where they want to be able to have the power to control the very basis of your existence, the right for you to leave your home, to talk to another person, to meet another person. All those things were restricted. I see a man of faith here. To go to church was forbidden, don't forget. To go to the mosque was forbidden, don't forget. To believe in your belief was forbidden, therefore. Therefore, when I say the anti-lockdown protests were, if you like, the core of the struggle for maintaining democracy, I mean, that's just the reality. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything those people say, but it is what maintained democracy in the modern world in recent times.
Yes. Yeah, with regard to the nasty campaign against Jeremy Corbyn at that time, anti-Semitize, in what terms, is a kind of censorship?
Yes, I mean, they use the term anti-Semitism for anything. So, I mean, I remember being at a meeting with when this whole thing started. I was at the meeting filming it with Jeremy Corbyn, and then it was a meeting on Chakrabarti was speaking about an investigation into anti-Semitism, and then there was a guy called Mark Wordsworth, an anti-racism campaigner, and he was there, and there was an MP called Ruth Smith who was there, and he made a comment, "Oh, you would say that," and then she stood there. I saw her looking at her, and she pulled this face. She goes, and then ran out the room after thinking how she could manipulate what was said. She ran out the room crying, or pretending to cry, and then that was all over the news. Ruth Smith offended by anti-Semitic trope. Now, trope is a ridiculous word. But anyway, anti-Semitic trope. What was the anti-Semitic trope? He said, well, you would side with the Daily Telegraph. In other words, did he mean the Daily Telegraph and the mass media is controlled by an international Jewish conspiracy, and therefore he's promoting anti-Semitic views that the Jews control the world's mass media? And so that was the story. And then suddenly Mark Wordsworth was expelled from the Labour Party, and Jeremy Corbyn didn't do anything about it, and nor did the other. And that's how you get started. If you don't defend your position, if you keep backing down, you keep crawling away, keep running away every time they attack you, you will lose. And that's what happened. That's what happened. That's why we needed people to stand up against the lockdowns and against the restrictions imposed on society. Because you had to turn around and say, enough is enough. You're not going any further. Otherwise, you just take it every time they tell you to do something. You bow down and do it. Well, of course, power is intoxicating for those with power. If I can tell this guy, get on your knees now, get on your knees, and he starts doing it, he starts becoming a power trip, right? So let's go and get me some cigarettes for you, go and get me some food, go and get me this, go and get me that, work for me, do that. You suddenly start becoming obsessed with this power you have over other people. And that's the way these people think. You know, you think
more they get,
Rishi
the more they
Sunak
want.
walks into the office and he knows that people are going to run around for him. So he becomes accustomed to this. This is the way I live. This is the way I operate. This is the way power operates. And so it is in the corporations. You think that Elon Musk walks into work and anybody can question him and talk to him on equal terms? They can't, because he immediately can sack them. They know there's a power relationship involved. So, you know, this idea that we live in a society of egalitarian relations between people is nonsensical. You know, and with the escalation or the concentration of power driven by capitalism in modern times, it's exacerbated to the nth degree. You know, just the same as they can blow people up with a nuclear bomb or kill an individual targeted across the world by drones that they drop out of an aeroplane to kill 20,000 people with AI determining whose face they will blow up. They can drop the drones out of a plane up here with all the faces of all the people in Speaker's Corner. And if you run away around London, jump into the tube, get out somewhere else, the AI will follow you and blow you up. That's how precise the technology of power is today. Because it's not just about blowing people up, because blowing people up loses the goose that lays the golden egg. The goose that lays the golden egg is that you work for them, you do their bidding, you repeat what they want. And in that way you become an agent of them without them blowing you up. The threat of blowing you up is the background to control you and make you do their bidding. Sorry, you're going to say something. No. Yes. Come here with it. Come here with it.
It's about the technology that we have now, as you said, drones and whatever happened.
Yeah.
And we saw the start action from 9/11 attack was drone attack, man-made attack. We know that fact. Second, what do you think about what we are going now ahead? Are we going to third nuclear war?
I don't think nuclear war. I think people who think that nuclear war is coming, I think you might have a limited nuclear war, but a nuclear war, generalized nuclear war, as I said, the purpose is not to blow you up. The technology is there to create instruments of fear. Everything is about fear and control. You know, now you go in the supermarket, and my local Tesco's, you go in the supermarket there, you've got all these rows of machines. And then the machine itself, which you put your card in, or some of them still take money, but not many. Now they've got these cameras, and they got your face on the screen as you're paying for your goods. Now they don't need that camera to see if you're stealing something, because they've already got cameras on the ceiling. So the camera there is to judge as literally as you put a product in, they're collecting your facial recognition features to know your psychology as you buy things, right? From your facial expressions, and they're capturing this information in order to try and this doesn't get saved on that little machine and stored there. They sell that to other companies and suddenly advertise you on the internet on your mobile phone. And then you go on your mobile phone wake up in the morning, put on the mobile phone, and then you start doom scrolling through TikTok or something like 2 hours later, time to wake up. Right, time to wake up. And then in the evening, or the afternoon, or on the tube, you don't want to talk to another human being after all. They're just in the way. So then you start scrolling the TikTok. That was so funny, that one. Whoa, look at that, dude. Oh, a lion ate an alligator. Look at that cat jump out the window. Look at that sexy girl. Look at that football goal. So you scroll through this crap day and night, and it fucks up your brain. And that's fed you from the crap that they collect on you. Everywhere you go around London, for example, like I said, in Tesco's, they're collecting images of you, facial recognition, to tell what you like and you don't like. And from that, they collect that data and sell it globally to the global artificial intelligence agencies who control the world's information. and that they control you through your mobile phone. Leave the phone at home. Leave it behind. 3 hours a day, just try it. Try it for half an hour a day. Leave it behind. Then see if you feel better during that half an hour. You get anxious, you know. God, I've got to go. I left mine. Then try it an hour. Then try it 5 hours. Then try it 10 hours. And you'll suddenly discover you have recaptured your ability to control your life. Because your life is controlled by them now.
Why do people want to control others?
Excuse me.
Why do people want
To extract surplus, that's why. You've got to extract surplus by your work. So your work. Marx explained this ages ago. In an 8-hour working day, the battle goes on. What part of that day is paying your wages, and what part is surplus value accumulated by the landlords, the capitalists, and the bankers. It's been like that for hundreds of years. Then there is, once you finish your working day, what part of that day are you working for them to create a profile of you and your friends and your associates on behalf of artificial intelligence, so that they can sell crap to you and control your life into the future. To know more about you than you know yourself. Know more about the community than the community knows about itself. And therefore control them and organize them to serve the interests of elite groups who control the world.
Yeah, in international relations, one of the dominant theory is liberal with their morals. Has AIA a moral?
Well, I didn't quite get the last bit. Has AI what?
Has a moral.
No, of course it doesn't. The so-called liberals, this is the game. You know, at the time of the 1848 revolutions, or the time of the American Revolution, or the French Revolution, liberty, equality, fraternity. This was the idea of capitalism. You can set up a business. You can put innovation. You can remake the world with clever ideas. And you can have liberty. Let people speak, not just the monarch who decides everything. You can let people speak. You can let people discuss. And through the clash of ideas, you can develop new synthesis of thesis, antithesis. You can develop new ideas. This was liberalism. 1789, the American Revolution, the 1848 revolutions, liberalism, the nation state, the people, power by the people, power of the people. But of course what happened was, in modern times, liberalism means power of big corporations over the people expressed through bullshit about so-called liberal ideas. What are these liberal ideas? Protect the environment. In other words, control the kids and manipulate them.
But let's take the anti-vax movement.
And get you to pay through your nose for resources that should be free. Electricity, gas, water, rent, they should be free or next to free. How long have we been able to produce power? How long have we been able to produce electricity? How long have we been able to produce gas, energy, heating? Right from Stone Age times, we've been able to live, to house ourselves. And yet, these are the basic struggles for existence in modern times. And so, this idea that they are serving us, the government serves us, Parliament serves us, the media serves us, the big corporations are cool and represent us. It is a lie. It's the exact opposite of the truth. At the top are the big corporations. Under them, the mass media. Under them, Parliament. And under them, local councils, local officials, local mechanisms of control. Down to the point, in recent times, down to the madness. But they have markers, they've still got them. You wander around London, you'll still see them. Markers on the floor as to where you stand. The Soviet Union never did that. They never did that in Maoist China. They never did that under Pol Pot. They don't do that in North Korea. And yet here we were, lining up like lambs to the slaughter, standing on a bloody piece of plastic saying, stand here, keep safe, put your mask on, don't infect people with your mouth. In other words, say no evil, speak no evil, don't leave your home, don't leave your home. What the hell is that? That's prison. That means prison, not a local prison. You haven't committed a crime. Instead of this, a global prison. in which you are free when you scroll through TikTok and watch that girl. Dum-ba-di-dum-ba-di-dum. Dum! Tits come out. Look at that. And that's how you're supposed to be free. Right? They enslave you with stupidity and they call that freedom. It's not freedom, it's enslavement. And the technological mechanisms of enslavement are constantly being enhanced. So yes, digital currency is a mechanism of that. That is why you should carry cash and use cash. Yes, 15-minute cities are an attempt to do things like that. Yes, ULEZ is those ULEZ cameras aren't there to watch over cars that are non-compliant. The ULEZ cameras are there for general surveillance of everybody. That's the purpose of them. They monitor all cars, not the bloody ULEZ non-compliant. That's why they're everywhere. They monitor every car. They know from the DVLA database who has got a compliant or non-compliant car. So why do you need to register anywhere? They know damn well what every car is, where every car is. So why do they need to have the cameras everywhere? The cameras are facial recognition cameras. They watch every car as it moves around the city. And the purpose of that, of course, the next phase of ULEZ development will be that they charge you to travel for every minute you travel. Oh no, by 2030 we have to get rid of these diesel and petrol cars. Everyone has to have electric car. Where's the electricity coming from? Coal, nuclear power, gas. They're the dominant sources of all electricity. The idea you can replace them with wind farms is idiotic. It's for fools. Wind power. That's windmills, yeah, windmills. Yes, Middle Ages we used windmills. Solar panels. Where do you think the solar panels come from? What do you think they're made of? Magic? They're made from resources from the Congo, extracted from the earth by 7 and 8-year-old children who die in the prime of their youth. Extracting these resources while Sadiq Khan and the morons turn around, oh, we're saving the environment, we're saving your children's health. The air in London is cleaner than it's ever been in modern time. In fact, back in time, when Britain was in feudal times, when they had the windmills, we chopped down all the trees and burnt the wood. 6 million people die from pollution every year. You don't want to know what they die of? They die from burning wood. Wood. Because wood burners. That's where people die. They're in Africa and India. People burn wood because that's the only fuel they got. They can't afford to buy coal, petrol, diesel. They can't afford batteries, and so they burn wood. And when they burn wood, the smoke in the air kills them. The smoke in the air from wood kills them. So when they say, you know, and the hippies, of course, gather around the campfire. That smoke from that fire, it smells so nice. It's a deadly, toxic smoke. The wood burners, the middle classes, they buy wood burner for their home. The wood burners produce more toxic poison than any of the normal fuel sources. It is a lie that electricity produced by coal, gas, or nuclear power is more polluting than burning wood. Or burning wood pellets. That's the new game. In Germany, they call it biofuel. So what do? They grow loads of trees. Green concession. So if I buy something, if I buy a car and I want to write it off against the Green New Deal, I say, okay, I bought a car, but I'm going to spend so and so much on green things. What are the green things? They're going to plant a tree. What do they do with a tree? They chop it down after 20 years. They compress it into little pellets, and then they burn the pellets. And then they start all over again. And that's called green. There is nothing green about it. The other thing they want to do. Sorry? Yeah, but then they're burning the tree. Firstly, it's incorrect to say that carbon is a threat. Human beings and all life on Earth is carbon. It's based on carbon. CO2 is the gas of life.
It's my friend
It's a fact.
in beer as well.
If you want to grow tomato and you've got a greenhouse, you manufacture tomatoes, in a farm. How do you make them grow? You go in there and you get a CO2 canister and you spray the CO2 on the tomatoes. That's where your Sainsbury's and all the rest of it come from. That's where they come from. They're spraying CO2 into the greenhouses to make them grow. And by the way, you know Prince Charles, King Charles, you know, people used to think he was a nutcase because he used to say, I talk to my plants and they grow. But that was the only mad thing that was true. Of course, if you talk to your plants, they grow. Because you're breathing CO2 onto the plants and they'll grow faster. It's a fact. They will grow faster, provided it's enclosed environment. So the more CO2, the more green. That's the fact. And they're telling you the opposite, the maniacs. They're telling you CO2 causes a loss of green. Look on the NASA website. I challenge you. Type in the following words on Google. NASA.gov. And then associated with that, type in greening of the earth, CO2. And you will see, in the last 10 years, more green foliage has covered the earth than the whole of India as a consequence of rising CO2 levels. CO2 produces green, not the other way around.
Man is a social animal. Do you understand? We need to touch. We need to interact with each other. Do you understand? Control, whether liked or not liked, is a way of encouraging that need. It stimulates.
Well, it would be if it was doing that, but it's not doing that.
It is because you gave an example.
It's a fake
You give examples. Examples are self-limiting. Every example you give, respectfully, can be contradicted by a contrary example.
That is a lie!
Yeah, but the thing is this, that we need to interact. We can only interact if there's a power or control over it. Some will agree with it, some won't agree with it, like the intervax, the vax.
I disagree with you.
You need to control in order to communicate.
The gentleman here is saying the control is the mechanism for us to communicate. In fact, the mechanism of
I
communication.
never had this argument.
No, exactly. The
Because
mechanism.
control
Hang on a minute.
stems from
Hang on a minute.
Control emanates from belief, and belief is the foundation of human man.
Belief.
Human.
You imagine the scenario.
But you don't need. You're a free being. You're a free being.
Imagine the
Why
scenario.
do you need to be controlled?
One sec.
Why will you?
I will call a halt in a minute. Imagine a scenario 20 years' time. And they have these robots that look like human beings, wander around and make things. They do your job. And they can be programmed to do bus driver, make tea, film a video, be a police dog, fly a helicopter, manufacture cars. They can be programmed to do this. And also, I don't know, be friendly with you, have a sex partner, have a husband or wife. You'll have a machine that looks like a human and responds in ways that emulate human beings. If that scenario exists in 20 years or 50 years' time, this is slavery. You are a slave to machines controlled by others. Whatever those machines make you do, either they consider, the talk is, oh, you're going to be dispensable, they're going to destroy you. That's one story. Elon Musk and co are saying that. But worse than that is if they make you their slave, based on who owns those robots. If the robots are slaves of ours and are made to do our bidding, okay, you could say there's a case for that.
Control of these things.
Sorry?
Why do you want to be the power?
I don't want to be the power.
You
I'm
want
saying
to be
the people must be able to control them,
analogy.
rather than them
He's
controlled
telling
by
you
corporations to control
That is
you.
What he's
Well,
saying.
if I have a robot that makes
It's
me a cup
coming.
of tea, I'm only going to
It's not
say
like
I'm a
it's
slave to that.
But
What, have you?
it's coming. That's
You're hardly going to say you're a slave. Tea's made.
If I've got a
Tea's
robot-
made.
If I've got
Tea's
a robot-
made.
Yeah, but I'm
1970s.
not a slave to my tea's made.
Well, you are, because it's got an alarm clock. And that was back then. What about
No, I
now?
don't have to turn-
What about
I
then? If
don't
you
have
don't
to
take your
turn the
tea,
alarm clock
if you don't
on.
take your tea,
I don't have to
it
take-
tasers you. Anyway, I've been speaking for a while. Thanks very much. See you again later.
Just one question. Why is it whenever I come up here, the people who speak the loudest talk the biggest load of shit?
Who knows? Empty vessels, they say, empty vessels. Oh, I was supposed to promote. Let me get my. Oh, it's not in there. There's a meeting taking place called United Front by Piers Corbyn. I'll put a link to it underneath the video. So if you want to come along to that, it's next Saturday in Islington. If you want to come along to that, come along. You're welcome to come along. We'll be discussing about various issues, like the issues we've discussed today and stuff that Piers talks about and so on. So do come along to that on next Saturday, and I'll put the details of that underneath the video.